Everybody ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Pedro Martinez, the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. I want to start first by acknowledging the members of our bargaining team for their exceptional effort throughout these negotiations, especially over the past 2 weeks. At the time when many were celebrating the holidays with family and friends, our leaders remained at the bargaining table. We're on day 14 of the winter break, and our negotiation team met with CTU 8 of these days, including Christmas Eve, the day after Christmas, the day after New Year's, and today. Their dedication is laudable and is a testament to our goal of reaching an agreement that rewards the hard work of our educators while safeguarding our district's financial future, and most importantly, building on the progress we made over the past several years that have helped our students thrive. As we move forward, we'll continue to push for productive conversations that lead us to thoughtful, reasonable compromises towards an eventual agreement. Quiero pedirles gracias a todos por estando con nosotros. Quiero que sepan que el equipo que tengo, que ha estado teniendo juntas con el sindicato de maestros, estamos en el día 14 de nuestro break, pero nuestro equipo ha estado trabajando 8 de esos 14 días, incluyendo hoy. Y es porque tenemos la misma urgencia para tener un contrato. Over the break, we made progress on several priority areas, including staffing, which our Chief Talent Officer, Ben Fulton, will discuss in a few minutes. Miguel Peretta, our district's Chief Labor Relations Officer, will also outline a series of verbal tentative agreements which have been reached between the district and our partners at CTU. We need these agreements in writing and signed by both parties so we can take them off the table and focus on these outstanding areas. These include everything from employee healthcare contributions, investments in special education, joint committees that will work on green schools, housing, and career and technical education. And we'll also hear from our Chief Education Officer, CEDO Chkoumbova, regarding some key proposals related to our daily student experience. Hasta ahorita estamos de acuerdo en muchos temas, incluyendo temas de cómo vamos a ayudar a nuestros niños que no tienen dónde vivir, cómo vamos a juntar juntos para mejorar nuestros programas técnicos, y también cuando estamos mirando nuestros edificios, cómo los podemos hacer más, que estén más friendly para el environment. Y mi equipo en unos minutos va a dar más detalles. Overall, the discussions between the two bargaining teams has been detailed and collaborative. From the start, CPS has been guided by our strategic plan and our values. Our CPS team has carefully considered each of the 700 proposals presented to us by CTU. We have worked to provide thoughtful and affordable responses, doing the most we can for our educators while we're in a challenging budget environment, and remaining true to our mission aligned with our strategic plan. A prime example that I want to cover is raises. So we offered from the very beginning 4% cost of living adjustments to our CTU members, and that's despite our fiscal challenges. By the way, the last time that we have done that was in the 2000s. And by the way, I know that because I was here. I actually helped negotiate that first contract in the 2000s. And at that time, our average teacher salary was $60,000. Today, it is $96,000. And by the way, I'm very proud of that. Ya hemos ofrecido a nuestros maestros levantar sus salarios para más de 4%. Y la última vez que hicimos esto era en los 2000, donde yo estaba aquí en el distrito y yo ayudé para finalizar este contrato. Pero en ese tiempo, nuestros maestros, on average, ganaban $60,000. Ahora ganan, on average, $96,000 por año. Y de verdad me da mucho orgullo eso. The reason for this bold initial offer is simple. We respect our teachers and the work that they do. CPS teachers are among the country's most dedicated, most innovative educators, and their compensation should reflect that. Our offer of 4% cost of living adjustments keeps Chicago educators exactly where they should be. The highest paid urban public school teachers in the United States, with the only exception in being in a few categories in New York City where teachers are paid a little bit more on the top end of the scale. Ahorita cuando estamos hablando, con lo que estamos ofreciendo a nuestros maestros, ya son los maestros que ganan lo demás de todos en el país, en distritos grandes, con una excepción de unos maestros que tienen más años en la ciudad de New York City. It also aligns with our agreement with SEIU and other major labor contracts in the city. It's also the greatest increase we've seen. It's a greater increase than the last contract. In the last contract, we offered 16% over 5 years. In this contract, we're offering 16% over 4 years. I also want to remind everyone, and I know this is really easy to forget, our teachers get additional raises. The 70% get what we call step increases, which are additional raises they get for moving up from 1 year to second year, third year. And in fact, the average increase when you factor that in is actually 7.5% for the first year of the contract and up to 32% during the contract's tenure. We're thankful the CTU has made some movement on their initial raises. They first asked for 9% COLAs, not counting steps. Now they're at 6% for the first 2 years and 5% for the following 2 years. But as we move toward a final agreement and we enter a new budget season where the district has a $500 million structural deficit, and we've been very public about this, we need to maintain our current proposal for the fiscal health of the school system. Me encanta que en este contrato estamos ofreciendo más en este contrato que el contrato que tuvimos. En el contrato que acabamos de acabar, ofrecimos 16% sobre 5 años. En este contrato nuevo es 16% sobre 4 años. Y nos va a ayudar para que nuestros maestros sean y se queden los mejores maestros que están pagados en el país, en distritos grandes. Pero también sabemos que el sindicato ha pedido mucho más. Y el problema es que tenemos para el año que viene, ya tenemos un déficit de mitad de $1,000 millones y tenemos que ser responsables con nuestras finanzas. The other topic I want to talk about, everybody, is staffing. When it comes to staffing, I'm very proud that since 2019, based on need, we added over 7,000 staff to our school, including thousands of teachers, special ed assistants, or SICAs, hundreds of nurses, case managers, restorative justice coordinators, instructional coaches, counselors, and social workers, and more. I'm also proud that these were all allocated through an equity lens. And so I hear a lot of narratives out there, but please, I invite you to go to our schools in our poorest communities. They have the smallest class sizes. They have more people in their buildings than ever before, and many of them with even less children than they had in 2019. And by the way, this has led to significant academic progress. We are leading the country in the post-pandemic learning recovery with our Black students leading the way, followed right next to them with our Latino students. Frankly, these positions were made possible because of federal COVID dollars. But this relief is no longer available. As you know, those funds expired. So our number one priority is to ensure that we can protect the gains in staffing that are driving our student gains. That is our number one priority, and I want to be very clear about that. So we're thankful the CTU has walked back their initial asks, which have opened the door to some progress. Originally, CTU had 60 proposals that asked for 14,000 additional employees. That's in addition to the 7,000 that we've added because we ask. So does that mean you want us to remove the ones we added? They're like, no. We want you to add an additional 14,000. Now, the initial estimate for that was $5.5 billion. In December, CTU did give us a roadmap where they walked that back a bit. And so now those proposals, again, are a little bit less, but again, we're still asking for thousands of positions. So I can tell you from our perspective, if we're going to add staff, it has to be tied to student needs. That's what we've been doing since 2019, even with our federal dollars. So we are agreeing to add some more resources for students, for example, because we have more students that have IEPs. We have more English learners. So you're going to see areas of agreement where we're adding more resources. And I'll let our Chief Talent Officer provide more details. Quiero que sepan, un lugar donde todavía estamos discutiendo con el sindicato es quieren que pongamos más empleados. El problema es que desde 2019 hemos ponido más de 7,000 empleados, más de lo que teníamos antes. Más maestros, más consejeros y siempre ayudando a las escuelas que tenían más necesidad. El problema es que el sindicato pidió no nomás esos 7,000 que se queden, pero 14,000 más, que va a costar más de 5.5 mil millones. Y no tenemos ese tipo de dinero. Pero sí estamos poniendo de acuerdo dónde poner más inversión, de más maestros y más ayuda, porque tenemos más niños que tienen necesidades especiales y más niños que tienen inglés como una segunda idioma. Pero todo lo que estamos de acuerdo es donde tenemos más necesidad. So we share the board's urgency in reaching a final agreement as quickly as possible. And we will need to pass a budget amendment to the current budget as we're entering the new budget season. So right now we are in the process of really getting clarity on what their price tag is so we can figure out how we can pay for everything in the new contract. And that is why we are negotiating in good faith, and we'll continue to negotiate even as we go through the holiday break. But the eventual agreement must be aligned with our strategic plan. It must be financially sustainable. And if we overextend ourselves today, it will be our children and staff that pay the price tomorrow. So before I turn it over, I want to thank my team for their dedication and work. I look forward to our continued productivity as we work towards what we want, a fair, sustainable, financially responsible agreement that provides all of our students with a rigorous, joyful, and equitable daily learning experience that they deserve. I will now turn it over to Chief Labor Relations Miguel Beretta to go over some of the tentative agreements we've achieved.
Thank you, CEO Martinez. I'm glad to report that we've been making actually steady progress despite what you've been hearing. We've actually have several verbal tentative agreements that we've reached with the CTU or TAs that you've heard in several priority areas. To date, we have met with CTU more than 74 times, including 23 meetings in December alone, 8 of which occurred while the district was closed this month. CTU has identified 82, quote, big ticket must-haves that they identified in their roadmaps. We have provided comprehensive responses to more than 66 of those priorities to date. We have asked our CTU partners to memorialize these tentative agreements in writing as quickly as possible. This will allow both bargaining teams to continue to build trust and to lay the foundation for continued progress. Here are some of the highlights of the tentative agreements that we have reached with our CTU partners. With respect to healthcare, we have committed to no increases in healthcare contributions for employees earning $90,000 or less during the term of the agreement, while at the same time we have expanded benefits to include coverage for dental, vision, abortion care, gender affirming care, and extended paid parental leave and personal illness leave to our paraprofessionals. With respect to sustainable community schools, expanding the Sustainable Community Schools program to include to 70 schools by the end of the agreement. With respect to special education, we have committed to at least 2 release days per school year to work on IEPs, for co-teachers to receive a minimum of at least 2 additional preparation periods per quarter for collaboration. And finally, for special education teachers, will not be required to cover classes when we lack a substitute teacher. With respect to LGBTQIA+, we have committed to a gender support coordinator will be assigned to each network to provide support, and that any dress code adopted by the Board of Education be inclusive of all gender expressions. With respect to housing, we have committed to a joint housing committee to advise the board to align its internal policies and procedures with those of the city department and sister agencies. With respect to green schools, we are committed to a joint committee to sustain and expand environmentally focused capital improvement efforts district-wide. For career and technical education, a joint committee to collaborate with the unions and industry partners to create additional student apprenticeship opportunities. Again, these are verbal, tentative agreements that we have reached at this point, and we asked our CTU partners to put these in writing as quickly as possible. This will allow both bargaining teams to continue to build trust and not revisit these items at a later point in time. Now, I will turn it over to my colleague, Ben Felton, the Chief Talent Officer, for an update on some of the staffing commitments.
Thanks, Chief Peretta. Good afternoon. My name is Ben Felton. I'm the Chief Talent Officer here at Chicago Public Schools. As the CEO mentioned, our top staffing priority has been preserving these 7,000 new employees that we have in schools that we've added over the past 5 years. It's about an average of about 14 additional staff members at each CPS school over the past 5 years. Like Pedro said, those are teachers, SICAs. Those are hundreds of nurses, case managers, social workers, restorative justice coordinators, instructional coaches, interventionists, counselors, social workers, and more. As those of you who cover CPS regularly know, I like to say we have more licensed educators in front of our kids than at any point in recent history. And protecting those investments as we move into a more difficult budget season has been a top priority of the CEOs and of our negotiating team. We know how important these positions have been over the last few years, but preserving these positions has been a real challenge financially, and it will continue to be so in the years ahead. So, as many of you know, these were funded with COVID relief money for several years, and now we're working through how to fund them for the long term. Now, like Pedro mentioned, when we entered the contract negotiations, CTU's initial asks were for about 14,000 additional staff in our schools. After months of negotiations, we're really pleased that those asks have come down very significantly over the last several months and even more so over the last few weeks. And I think we're getting closer on tentative agreements on most of the big staffing questions. And I'm grateful to our counterparts at CTU for coming back towards our initial proposals, and I think we are making significant progress on that front. Now, we have made significant progress and significant commitments despite the district's difficult financial position, while being mindful of the district's bottom line. We are, like Pedro said, we are investing in critical areas, and we're investing in positions that will serve our most vulnerable students. So I'd like to just talk through some of those investments quickly. We've committed to about 100 additional, and these positions, some of which will be implemented immediately, many of which will be phased in over a 4-year contract. So about 100 additional English language program teachers to support bilingual students and ELLs, about 30 additional bilingual teacher assistants, which will support an increase in support for English learners, about 160 additional case managers because we're serving more students with IEPs and 504 plans, an additional 55 social workers for our students who need extra supports outside of the classroom, a net increase of at least 30 librarians, and a cohort program to support at least 40 CPS educators a year to earn that Illinois licensure to become a librarian in Illinois. 4 centrally assigned technology coordinators in each geographic network for a total of 68 to be tech coordinators to be phased in over the course of the agreement. Ensuring that a teacher assistant is assigned to every gen ed preschool classroom to support our youngest learners, and establishing full-time network-based fine arts positions to serve schools that have vacant arts positions to make sure that every kid in Chicago is getting arts instruction. So, look, given the challenge that we have in preserving the 7,000 positions that we've added since 2019, and now these additional staff that we have committed to, we are reaching the end of our financial capacity to add more positions to our books. We've made that clear to our partners at CTU at the negotiating table, but we are really proud of these commitments because they are targeting some of the most vulnerable students in Chicago, and that's where the CEO has been very clear that he wants us to be investing in. Regardless, we will stay at the table and keep working until we have a final agreement that does right by our students and staff and is sustainable in the long term. Like, we're tired. We've been there all break. I think we were there, 6-7 days over the 2 weeks, over the 10 days over the break, with the exception of just some holidays. We've been working really hard to get a fair deal for our staff and for our students, and we're committed to continuing to do so until we reach an agreement. So with that, I'd like to introduce our final speaker, Chief Education Officer CEdO Chkoumbova. Bogdana.
Thank you, Ben, and good evening. While I know that the work is challenging, I'm also encouraged by the progress we have seen in the last month, and I'll say especially even in the last couple of weeks. As a former CPS teacher and principal, I'm particularly proud of how the district's current proposals are aligned with our instructional core vision, with our strategic plan, and also really focused on helping our students build on the impressive gains that they have made in recent years. At the same time, as a Chief Education Officer, I have to underscore the fact that we have a long way to go until all of our students reach their full potential, perform academically on grade level, and also have a joyful and rigorous experience in every single building. There are several areas where we feel very strongly about protecting and preserving the successful academic vision that we have laid out. First, I want to start with instructional time. You probably have heard me talk about instructional time. I use every possible occasion to elevate the importance of it. Simply put, more time in the classrooms often leads to a greater academic gains for students. We saw this during the pandemic, post-pandemic, when investments in strong classroom instruction and supplemental activities, enrichment activities, interventions led our CPS students to outperform their peers in growth. Maintaining instructional time is also a significant equity issue. More time in the classrooms is essential for students who need assistance getting up to grade level. It is also essential for students to continue to expand their learning and potential through enrichment opportunities. In the initial proposal from CTU, they asked for increasing planning time for elementary school teachers from 60 to 90 minutes daily. Recently, they reduced their request to 80 minutes daily, and also, very important development, they joined us in committing to protect student instructional time. You probably can sense how important this is for me, and I think how important this is for our entire educational system. We are diligently working with CTU to explore opportunities, including what are the financial cost implications, also of the implications on the resources, including preparation, planning, and professional development time, without impacting student instructional time. CPS already proudly leads large school districts across the nation when it comes to time provided to teachers to prepare their lessons. So we understand the value of planning time, but it cannot come at the expense of instructional time, and I am very glad that CTU shares our position. Now I want to go to evaluations. Every student deserves high-quality instruction delivered by an effective teacher. While they are not the be-all, end-all, regular evaluations are important to maintaining teacher effectiveness. We recognize the need to advocate in Springfield for changes in the state law that addresses the needs of our educators. CPS has worked productively with both teachers and school leaders over the years to strengthen our evaluation system. According to research performed by University of Chicago in 2020, the vast majority of teachers and school leaders say that the district's evaluation system has improved instructional practice and also has improved student learning. So for those reasons, we will continue to oppose any proposals that would lower evaluation standards and reduce accountability. Next, I want to move on to high-quality curriculum. We know that quality teaching must go hand in hand with the high-quality materials that we put in front of our students. In our academic vision, every school should maintain a consistent, high-quality curriculum that is culturally relevant, and it's also aligned to rigorous grade-level learning standards. When teachers collaborate to support student learning from one classroom to the next and one grade level to the next, students are more likely to retain concepts and knowledge as they progress from a preschool all the way to graduation. This is why one of our main goals in the strategic plan is for 100% of our schools to adopt evidence-based, high-quality, and culturally responsive curriculum. We will continue our work towards this goal, including maintaining high-quality curriculum standards in the upcoming CTU contract. And finally, I need to speak about principal autonomy and accountability. We need to preserve our principal's authority to set the school-wide instructional vision and also to maintain the day-to-day operations in the building. If we're going to hold our principals accountable for the performance of their schools, we need to empower them to ensure consistent quality across all classrooms and all grade levels. Strong schools are only possible with strong leaders. And our negotiating team will continue to stand strong against any attempts to weaken principals' ability to lead their schools and to support the students that they serve. So again, we know that most of the focus and the discussion has been on financial implications from this district. But as an educator, I want to also elevate the importance of things that matter to our students. And these are all the areas that contribute significantly to a high quality, joyful, and rigorous experience. And ultimately, our goal to improve academic performance for our students. They are aligned to our 5-year strategic plan, and we will work to protect all of them. So now I'll turn it back to CEO and for Q&A portion.
Thank you, Bogdana. Questions?
I have two questions. One, the CTU is sort of painting this as though you're the hold-up in negotiations, that you've slowed negotiations since 2 weeks ago, and I was just wanting you to respond to that. And the second thing is that today they brought up the prospect of losing what they said was $1.1 billion in reserves to settle this contract, and I'm wondering if that's an option.
Yeah, so there's, first of all, the urgency has never been higher. And as you can tell, I mean, the number of meetings, the hours, I know it's been said, well, the CEO's not there. There's no CEO that has ever participated in negotiations, but I can tell you that I debrief with the team every day. We talk about what the goals are for the day. And so there is no evidence at all. In fact, it's just the opposite. We are wanting to memorialize agreements because one of the frustrations my team continues to see over and over again is things get revisited. And in some cases, things that we thought we agreed upon months ago. And so again, and we share this with our board, we plead, let's get tentative agreements for the things that are already agreed upon. We went from 700 proposals now to 100 and plus. But none of those matter if they are not signed and on paper. By the way, that is the way every single CTU negotiation process has always been since the day of time. That's the way it works, everybody. In the old days, our team used to carry printers so they could actually print stuff out. So and we're not seeing that. So that's number one. There is no reserves. Our cash reserves are less than $50 million for an operating budget of well over $7 billion. We borrow for the majority of our payrolls throughout the school year. There is no cash. There is no reserves. And so that has been the challenge that we have had and shared, which is why, again, we will be allies. And I am, again, pleading allies, and we have to be championing for more resources from either state or local. And unfortunately, we're not going to get that opportunity with federal. Sí, lo que quiero primero decir, no hay nada de verdad que estamos bloqueando estas negociaciones. Lo contrario es verdad. Mi equipo ha estado casi todos los días hasta en el break. Y lo que necesitamos ahorita, ya tenemos muchos temas que ya tenemos de acuerdo, pero no los quieren poner en papel, porque el proceso para un contrato ha sido lo mismo por los últimos 20, 30 años. Cuando llegamos de acuerdo, tenemos lo que decimos un tentative agreement, es un acuerdo que no es final, pero ya está escrito y ya podemos enfocar en otros temas, ¿verdad? Eso no está pasando ahorita. Y hasta tenemos situaciones con ejemplos que algo que ya pensamos que ya estamos de acuerdo, de hace meses lo traen otra vez. And maybe that strategy of bringing things back, maybe that's to maximize more, right? But here's the problem. You can't say that things are being delayed when you're revisiting things that have already been agreed upon. Those two statements are contradictory. Y también el tema que tenemos dinero, no tenemos dinero. Estamos pidiendo préstamos cada año para el payroll, más de la mayoría. Así que no tenemos nada en reserva. Tenemos menos de $50 millones por un presupuesto de más de 7 mil millones. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that question. So again, I think like when we started out, we received over 740 plus proposals from the CTU. I think on December 2nd, they gave us what they've called a roadmap, about 86 or so big ticket items, big ticket priorities. And ever since then, we've been laser focused on tackling those big priorities the CTU has identified. And like I shared earlier, out of those 86, we've given more than 66 comprehensive responses to each of those priorities. And yet, we're still revisiting non-big ticket items, non-priority items from the initial 700 proposals. So while a lot has been said that CTU has scaled back some of their proposals, that's not the reality. Unfortunately, every day that we're at the bargaining table, we're spending a lot of our time on none of those priorities. And we're more than happy to share kind of our comprehensive responses to all of those proposals with respect to those big ticket items. And what you said in terms of kind of progress, it's just like we said, in terms of the 4% COLA, we offer that in September. We offered a 16% increase in 4 years in September. Last time we ultimately agreed to 16% 5 years after a strike. That just goes to show the amount of progress that we've made, how different, the different approach that we have taken under CEO Martinez leadership at the bargaining table. A lot of those, like what I said, those 66 comprehensive responses to those priorities have been months in the making. Those did not just take place in the last couple of weeks. We have the receipts. We're more than happy to show them.
What, if anything, might change when the new board is sworn in?
So to be really clear, I mean, this contract will be approved by the new board. And I think what we're going to have is, first of all, more diversity and more perspective. I am very confident that we're going to get to an agreement. I'm very confident. I don't have any doubts about that. I think what this board is going to do, though, is they're going to make sure that they're representing all perspectives and not just one. And that's why it's so important that, again, that we continue to negotiate in good faith. We're going to be briefing our board members next week. We have an orientation with them. But again, I have no concerns. In fact, if anything, I think it's just going to make a better overall proposal that really does represent our children, that keeps us still financially responsible, and that is still aligned to our values.
I want to make it very clear that we're engaging in good faith conversations and discussions. But the parameters are very clear from our side. And just recently, I will say, actually, as a matter of fact, this week, CTU clarified for all of us that they're not looking to cut instructional time. What this could look like still is in the processes, in the phases of exploration. Whether or not that's going to mean adding additional instructional days for kids, to compensate for some less time during the school day, whether or not that's going to mean some other, strategies that can be deployed. But I can be very clear with everyone. While I'm the Chief Education Officer of Chicago Public Schools, I will not think and recommend or agree upon reducing instructional time for our students. especially now that they're coming from, pandemic. They still need a lot of support and engagement. And I am not saying that needs to be a kill and drill curriculum. I just want to be very explicit about this. This is about a holistic and joyful experience. Yes, kids learn in arts and music and any exploratory courses at the same time. They also need their time to learn literacy, science, and social science, and everything else. So the conversation is rigorous. It requires a lot of exploration and in-depth exploration. But right now, we are not committed to any changes to it.
Can I just ask you sort of along those lines? Yesterday, the CTU was talking about how the REACH evaluation has been, they said that there are studies that show that it's biased against teachers teaching in predominantly black schools. And I'm wondering if you've seen those studies and if you think that there's any modifications to the REACH evaluation that need to be made to adjust for some of that bias.
Yeah, I will share a few points, and Bennett, feel free to join me on this. So number one, yes, we are aware of the studies that have come out there at the state level. I just want to make that very clear. The other one is we did have proposals, and we did have some recommendations how to address some of this, specifically around evaluations for teachers in high-need communities. Just to be transparent, we added on commitments around increased mentoring and supports for teachers, really helping out to address some of that. Right now we're still discussing, and I brought up REACH earlier, is we are committed to improve the experience of the educators, but expanding teacher evaluation cycles to once in 3 years or reducing the requirements for teachers to meet certain, performance benchmarks doesn't necessarily address that particular issue, and also is something that we believe we need to uphold, for the benefit of our students.